Test, test, test. You think I'd know how to do this now, wouldn't you? But nope. I don't! Hello, welcome back to my channel. So today I thought I would do a video talking about books that I read in school but actually liked. It's a really long-winded title, I know. Often we read books in school because they're part of a reading list. We have to study them for an exam. You know, we have to do something with these books, and quite a lot of the time they're not very good. They're considered literature books. They're like classic books that are sometimes a little bit boring, very dense, and you have to study and analyse the hell out of them, which makes them just not very fun to read. Like, oh. But there were some books that I read in school which I actually loved and really enjoyed. And obviously exam season has just finished, school has just broken up, and I actually get quite a lot of questions about what I read in school and how to kind of read them and study them, and I think that's a completely different video because it goes into a lot more depth, so I may do that. But I thought I'd talk about the books that I read in school which I actually really enjoyed, because not all of them are bad. There are some really good ones, and when you can kind of step away from the analysing and try to memorise quotes, they're actually pretty good, in my opinion anyway. Like, I may hate books you love and you may hate books I love, but opinions. So the first one we have is Face by Benjamin Zephaniah, which was actually one of the first books I read during my school time. I read this book in year 8, so I would have been about 12, and I remember loving it. I loved it from when we were reading it, and this was actually a book which we would read chapter by chapter in class before the analysing of it and coming up with the themes together because we were still little. This book is about a boy called Martin who's kind of like the party boy at school, like the popular kid and all that kind of thing, and him and his friends get into a car accident one night, and it leaves him with a lot of facial disfigurement. It is his life after that, and kind of he's relied very much on being popular and his looks and stuff, and then suddenly people start treating him very, very, very differently, and it's everything that happens after that. It was one of the first books that I'd read that dealt with very, very, very serious issues like this and real issues, and I remember loving it and really enjoying it and thinking it was really important and touched upon some really important things, and actually studying this book I really enjoyed it. It was a really, really interesting book to read and a really important book to read, and I just remember really liking the entire process of reading it, and to the point where I actually bought it myself. I think it's really important, and it has lots of really, really, really important messages in it. Then we have Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen, which was a book that I read for my first year of my A-levels. Essentially I had to write fan fiction for our creative writing aspect of my English literature A-level, and I really, really, really wanted to do Harry Potter, but my teachers didn't consider it as literature, which fight me. So we had to choose a book off this list. This was there at the time the film came out, which had Robert Pattinson in it, and I was trying to make as much of a tenuous link as possible. And this is set in America around the time of the Prohibition and the Great Depression, and it focuses on a recently orphaned and penniless boy called Jacob Jankowski, who after the death of his parents jumps on a travelling circus train, and it actually turns out to be the Benzini brothers circus, the greatest show on earth, and it is him kind of joining that circus, and lots of stuff unfolds from that. I really, really, really loved reading this book. I really loved kind of, because we had to write essentially fan fiction, we had to take themes from the book and write short original stories based on those themes and the characters in the books, which I really loved doing, and because it wasn't simply just memorising stuff, and it was actually kind of going in and really exploring the characters and everything, but kind of being able to do that with what I wanted to do and my own kind of time. I really, really, really enjoyed doing it. I really enjoyed the book. It's actually old Jacob telling the story of himself when he was younger and what happened. I really, really, really liked it. I love the writing style. I love the story. Again, it touched upon some really important themes and issues and circus and what circuses were like way back then, because they weren't very good, and I just think it's a really, really, really good book. I really enjoyed it. I'm still bitter that I couldn't write about Harry Potter though. I could have aced that if I could have done that. Then we have The Woman in Black, which is a book I did for one of my, I think, drama. Was it English or drama? One of them. We studied this. This book is about a man called Arthur Kipps, who is a junior solicitor, and he has to go and attend the funeral of Mrs. Alice Strablow, who was the last kind of heir to a house called Eelmarsh House, which is kind of set at the end of a causeway. Very creepy house, very weird, and he ends up going, and when he gets to the town, this was kind of around the time where not much transport existed. It was set a long time ago, I'm not sure exactly the time that it was set, but a while ago. So he visits the house and everyone in the village is telling him to not go to the house, they don't want him to, and everything's kind of a bit creepy, and he spots this woman in black, and once he's seen her, weird stuff starts to happen to the children in the village. And it is a horror novel. It's terrifying, it's really scary, and the play is terrifying. We went to see it with a school trip because we studied it, and the movie is also very terrifying, and I feel like the book is just really good. The suspense in it, the writing in it, I've really enjoyed reading it, and the fact we got to go and see it was really enjoyable as well. And it was just a book which I didn't feel annoyed that we had to study because I just enjoyed it so much, and it just had so much to it. Then we have On the Road by Jack Kerouac, which is semi-autobiographical because Jack Kerouac did this thing where he would write stories and they were basically things that happened, but he would just change the names to make them sound fictional. And this is about a guy called Sal Paradise, Jack Kerouac, who went on the road and explored different areas of America with a bunch of people. They got up to a bunch of things. It's set during the Beat Generation, which I actually have made a whole video about now, so look forward to that sometime soon. I'll get back to you when I've edited it, and it's actually how I want it to be. I really like this. This is why my channel is Run on the Road, because this is one of my favourite books ever. It has lots of issues with it. They weren't the best people. So I've explained and explored quite a lot of that in my video about the Beat Generation. This one I really enjoyed and I really liked writing about, and I thought there was some really good themes and issues and quotes and just stuff in this book which I really liked, and it was definitely one of the best ones that I studied. Like I said, it became one of my favourite books and I loved it a lot. Then we have Private Peaceful by Michael Morpurgo, which was the first book I ever read in secondary school as part of a book that we had to study, and I actually enjoyed this book so much that for Christmas that year I asked for it as a present. This is about a boy called Thomas Peaceful who is looking back over his childhood and when the battlefields of World War I and everything that happened, and this was the first kind of book that I remember reading which dealt with very real and important themes, and I really enjoyed doing it because it was really eye-opening and taught me a lot, as well as, like, it wasn't just didn't teach me a lot with kind of studying quotes and themes and stuff. It was the whole story of it, and I learned a lot when I was reading this book, and I just really enjoyed it, and I loved studying it, and I was really sad when we stopped studying it because I just thought it was really good. And like I said, it was the first book I studied in school, but I loved it a lot and it's always stayed with me, and I knew I wanted it, and I just think it's really important. Michael Morpurgo is brilliant. He's such a good author and he writes about some really important things. And finally we have Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, which I'm sure if you did your GCSEs this year you want to just click off this video. I understand. I did not like this book when I first studied it. It was every time I'd go into an English lesson I just wanted to throw the book at the wall. I didn't like it. It was really annoying. I just remember hating this book when I had to study it, and then a couple of years later, because I did my GCSEs 6/7 years ago. Maybe you don't even do it now, maybe it's a completely different book. But I did my own GCSEs 6/7 years ago, and I read it actually a couple of years later when I was kind of 18, 19, because it's not very long. And when I didn't have to study the hell out of it and pick it apart, I really enjoyed it and remember really liking it. This is about two friends, George and Lenny, and it focuses very heavily on the American dream and trying to achieve that American dream. And it's not the happiest, it's definitely not a happy book, but when you're away from pulling it apart and just trying to find quotes and themes, it's actually got some really important things to it which I don't think you pick up as much when you're picking it apart. Funnily enough, you kind of, when you just read it, and you can really properly read it and take it in without having to stop and think, oh, that's an important quote. It's really good, and when I reread it I actually really liked it. So I didn't like it in school, but later on I did enjoy it, and it was a book I studied, so it counts. So yeah, so those are just some books that I studied while I was at school that I actually enjoyed, and they gave me hope that not all books were going to be rubbish when I had to read them rather than choosing them. So it was really good, and I liked the fact that I distinctly remember when I would read them, the teachers that I had during those times and what the teachers taught me from the books, and there's lots of things that I remember really learning about. Private Peaceful was really weird because I vividly remember being in the classroom and the teacher that I had and the kind of way she would read it to us and how we would read it and the stuff she would tell us about it, which I really enjoyed, and same with Face, and they just kind of it was good because I got told when I was going into secondary school that the books would be rubbish and GCSE books are rubbish, and actually it was really good to have some which I found myself enjoying and it wasn't awful to have to study. So what books have you read in school that you've had to study that you've actually really enjoyed? Because I'd love to know. Any of them the same as mine? Have you got any other ones? Let's all discuss it. If you're new here, I make videos a couple of times a week, so if you'd like to stick around and join us, then you can do that. And as usual, all my links will be in the description below, so if you'd like to come hang out with us on other social medias, you can do that. Thank you guys for watching. I hope we're doing really well, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!